Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you guys how to change out a CV axle or just want to replace the boot. Watching a lot of videos and reading forums. If you haven't driven too long with the ripped boot, the way to go is to actually just replace the boot and fill it with grease, since the OEM CV axle is pretty superior to anything you can buy aftermarket. So here are the supplies you need. Some 75W90. When you take out your axles, all your front diff fluid will come out. The two greases that come with the Toyota kit. I have all the links below to either Amazon or the Toyota website, whatever's cheaper. So the kit comes with a bunch of C-rings, clamps, a rubber one, a plastic little boot. I'll tell you all about that. Bunch of socket and tools. You can do manual, electric, some crimpers. You're going to be cutting a lot of clips from your old CV axle to remove the boots. And I'll make sure you link to this one. It's a little tool to reclamp your new boots. And here's a little C-ring remover and 35mm. I think a 6-sided bolt to remove your axle nut. And those are nail punches to mark your parts, so you put them in the exact same orientation. Here's some, let's see, front end kind of boot rubber stuff remover. So, jack up your car obviously. And as long as a couple jacks, I'm replacing both sides. Here's your undercarriage cover, 4 bolts. 2 long bolts, 2 short bolts, 12mm. And here's your hex nut cover. Just use a little chisel and go around slowly. You'll see a lot of videos people dent it and kind of just pry it off, but it's pretty easy. You also need some of these little, what are they called? Yeah, you know what these are called. I'll link it in the description below, but basically it's just a long piece of steel that you can bend over so your little cover doesn't fall off. And this is your 35mm. You can do the brake method where your friend puts on the brake, or use a little. And here's the pin right here you remove. This is the top bolt, control arm, 19mm. I mean, whether you have a 4Runner or Tacoma, it's pretty much the same setup, so this should help most Tacoma and 4Runner owners. And these are nice to kind of pop them off the bushing. Some people just kind of pry it off. Either way, this is a little safer for your rubber mounts. So another 2 19mm bolts. The 03 and up Toyotas, they made a nice design where you can just remove the 2 19mm on the side, this one right here and the one in the back. And now you can use make sure you use what is it, bronze, copper. Yeah, I grabbed one from Harbor Freight so you don't dent all your threads. I mean, if you're replacing your axle, it doesn't really matter. You can just use a normal hammer, but you definitely want to use a bronze hammer if you're going to keep it. And you can just do a little pry bar in there and pry it open, and you can see how bad my CV axle is leaking. I did a little duct tape that didn't last too long. And there we go. You can see the gap now, and once you see a gap that big, yeah, and then the front diff fluid is dripping. My front diff fluid is pretty new, so yeah, that's why it looked pretty new. And, you know, most of the time my car's in rear-wheel drive, so don't use the front diff too much. So here's a little C-clip in the top. And basically I'm going to rush through a lot of this because basically it's pretty simple once you get out of the car. Getting out of the car is the hardest part. Now basically you remove, you know, all the parts. You can clean it, and basically the main part is cutting off your old boots and replacing it with the same clips and the same rubber boots. So there might be some parts I skip, but yeah, that's pretty all self-explanatory. Just clipping all through all the clips and just getting lots of rags to catch up all the grease that comes out of it. And this is where you're going to want your punch pin, because you want to, before you pull everything out, you want to put it in the same orientations. I'm going to wipe off some grease so I have a nice surface so I can do my punch mark or tape mark. I end up doing a tape mark, a little easier to see, and I can just remove it when I reinstall everything. So lots and lots of rag, cardboard paper underneath will save you lots and lots of headache at the end. So luckily when my leak was discovered, it wasn't raining and I hadn't driven on any rough terrain or anything, so inside these CV axles should be pretty clean, but you still want to remove all the grease. Use some brake cleaner to clean it later as well. So I'm just going to mark right there and then clean a spot on the metal rod axle itself. So here's the auto little nail puncher. And you're not ruining anything by punching it out here on the outside. So a little silver dot right there. Just do another one just in case. And now in the bar itself. And then I put a little tape to, just to make sure, to make it really obvious. Save you a lot of time. You just want everything to go back the way it was, so everything wears the same. Alright, we'll move on to the next step. Here's the little punch and the tape. It's kind of a triangle little bearing, little flex spot. So now you can pull it out, wipe everything with grease. And there's also another C-clip on top of this that you can remove the little triangle triple bearing thing. And if you have a lot of dirt and grime or even rocks in here, it might be better to just get a new axle. They're pretty cheap from Napa or AutoZone. I know Napa has a $60 or $70 one that has lifetime warranty, lifetime replacement. So a lot of people that go off-roading a lot, they just get one of the Napa ones and reboot kind of their OEM original one, so they always have one on the trail. But I don't do much off-roading, so I'm just want to reuse my OEM ones and reboot it. And this is my first time ever doing something like this, so I mean overall just took a little extra time. Some of the bolts or putting back in the axle was actually the hardest part. This cutting up the boot and stuff is all pretty easy. Alright, so once you remove it, you want to take the C-clip off, but before anything you want to do a nail punch on both this, the rim and the little machined steel part, stainless steel part on top. Just make sure you're able to see it pretty easily, because there's lots of little teeth, and you know, with over the years sometimes it's hard to see any marks that you make, because there might be marks from just normal wear and tear. So make a nice obvious mark. Even take a picture. I found that helped even better, because a lot of times I couldn't even see the little nail punch that I made. So now I'm removing the other boot, just clipping off the old clip. These are pretty hefty clip from the OEM. Once you get those removed, sorry I got a little grease on my camera, I had no idea, so bear with me here. There's a one rubber one and one plastic one. We're going to deal with this plastic one first. This will go over this axle. Again, I apologize for all the greasy camera. Just being a one-man cameraman is hard. So these are the special clamps that you'll need your little quality crimper tool. And I'll link this. Don't get the cheap one. There's a couple videos out there that people bought the used ones and they super regretted it. This one's nice. Took literally a couple seconds. Spent a couple extra bucks. Now that it's all crimped, pretty simple to use. Here's the bigger band after I put in all the grease. And When you put in your second boot, you want to cover these splines so the rubber boot doesn't really, beat up against it. And up here, use the yellow grease. Sorry, didn't mention before, but the first white bottle of grease is the gray one. This clear one is obviously the tan one, and the tan one goes into the kind of triple bearing thing. Of course, you clean everything, make sure you put in the right C-clips. The flat C-clips goes on top of this triple bearing thing, and then the kind of rounded edge C-clip goes on the end. So there's one CV axle done. There's a rubber boot. There's the new everything, and going back in the vehicle is just in reverse. Thank you.